This is Europe, India's second largest trading partner. And this is the maritime route usually used to ship goods between India and European countries. It spans 11,600 kilometers, making it a lengthy journey of at least 25 days. This route involves sailing through the Red Sea, which houses two critical choke points, Bab al-Mandeb and the Suez Canal. Recent events like the 2021 Suez Canal blockage and Houthi attacks amid the Israel-Palestine conflict have shown how vulnerable these choke points are for maritime trade.
Passage, it could have huge ramifications for global trade, especially between Asia and Europe.
The ongoing Houthi attack on the Red Sea alone is expected to cost India about $30 billion. But soon there will be an alternative, the India, Middle East, Europe Corridor, or IMEC. This 4,800-kilometer route will connect India to Europe through the Middle East and make trade 40% faster. That's not all. Many claim this route to be a new challenger to China's Belt and Road Initiative. So what exactly is the IMEC? What is its purpose? How will it impact India? And how does it compare with the Belt and Road Initiative? When India hosted the 2023 G20 summit, one of the most historic outcomes was the announcement of the India, Middle East, Europe Corridor, a 4,800-kilometer-long, multi-billion-dollar project aimed at linking India to Europe through the Middle East. Leaders from 8 countries like the United States, India, Saudi Arabia, United Arab Emirates, France, Germany, Italy, and the European Union signed a memorandum of understanding to initiate this significant project. What exactly does the IMEC look like? Let's pull out a map for this. It will be composed of 2 separate corridors. The East Corridor will connect India to the Middle East, and the Northern Corridor will connect the Middle East to Europe. This will be done through a series of railways and ports. So, if there is a shipping container to be sent from India to Europe, the shipment will travel from Mumbai to Jebel Ali Port in the UAE by sea. From here, the cargo will be transported via rail route through Saudi Arabia and Jordan to Haifa Port in Israel. And then, finally, by ship to the Greek port of Piraeus. However, the IMEC isn't just a transportation corridor. It is also a connectivity corridor. In addition to shipping and rail links, it will also include a hydrogen pipeline, a high-speed optical fiber cable, and electricity cables. Besides trade, the corridor aims to help create and export clean energy. It also plans to lay undersea cables to connect energy grids and internet lines, making sure everyone has reliable electricity and secure internet. But why is this a big deal? The main idea behind building this corridor is to provide an alternative to the existing trade route. Right now, most of India-Europe maritime cargo travels through this 193-kilometer-long and 200-meter-wide man-made waterway called the Suez Canal. This canal has been around for over 150 years and is one of the busiest choke points, handling about 13% of global goods trade. Just to give you an idea, around 90 ships pass through this man-made canal daily. In 2022 alone, over 23,000 ships used this route. Given this volume, the canal has started facing issues in handling large ships, including mega 24,000 TEU vessels. A telling example was in March 2021 when the canal was blocked for 6 days after a 20,000 TEU container ship called Ever Given was stuck sideways, leaving no room for other ships to pass. This incident left at least 369 ships stranded and caused a total trade loss of roughly $54 billion. Adding to this vulnerability is the recent Houthi attacks around the Red Sea, which have forced many ships to take a longer route. These events have served as a wake-up call for many countries, including India, about the serious difficulties that could arise in the narrow canal in the event of unforeseen circumstances. In contrast, the IMEC corridor offers a more stable and secure trade route. Moreover, the distance between India and Europe through the Suez Canal is 11,600 kilometers, with an additional 16 hours to cross the canal making the entire journey take at least 25 days. The IMEC is expected to reduce this time by 40% and shipment cost by 30%. So, the IMEC isn't just a shortcut, it's a cheaper and more efficient alternative for India and other member countries to trade. Additionally, the member countries within the corridor are among the major trade partners for India, while Europe is the second largest trade partner. Trade with Gulf countries is set to boom. Trade between India and the GCC, which includes the UAE, Qatar, Oman, Kuwait, Bahrain, and Saudi Arabia, has already surged, reaching $154.7 billion in 2021 to 2022. Furthermore, Saudi Arabia and the UAE are among the top oil-producing nations. Given India's status as the third largest oil importer, with a quarter of its imports being oil, membership in the IMEC adds considerable value to India's trade dynamics. Even if the corridor is implemented partially, it would significantly enhance India's trade. Now, let's talk about infrastructure. With the demand for new railways, gas pipelines, and data cables, the corridor opens up ample opportunities for construction and development. With India's track record of developing infrastructure at affordable and reasonable cost compared to other member countries, Indian companies like Larsen & Toubro, Ircon International, and RVNL are well positioned to win contracts and build rail and road projects. Even Haifa Port in Israel is owned by an Indian company, Adani Group. Moreover, among all the member countries, India stands out as the only country with a large labor force. Adding to this is the significant Indian diaspora in Middle Eastern countries. This makes the corridor a potential solution to meet the growing employment needs of India. However, despite the benefits, many are skeptical about the project and claim that the result of its implementation may not line up with the hype. First off, there's the cost involved. Right now, once you load a container onto a ship in an Indian port, it is offloaded at its final destination port. However, the IMEC introduces additional steps, including unloading in the UAE, putting the container on a train, unloading again in Israel, and finally loading onto another ship for Europe. The cost and time required for loading and unloading at each port along the route could end up defeating the whole purpose of the corridor. And then there are customs and security issues. Every time these containers cross a border, they need to go through customs checks. So, unless every transit country is on the same page with customs procedures, the goods won't move as fast as they would otherwise. Now on to problem number 2. The Middle East tension due to the Israel-Hamas war. The member countries have agreed to pool $20 billion for the project, mostly relying on private investors. But with the ongoing war, these investors might think twice before investing in the region. Plus, the whole risk of shipping goods through a war zone means the insurance and shipping costs will shoot up. The war has also become an obstacle in the efforts to normalize the relationship between Saudi Arabia and Israel. With these two countries not on good terms, the IMEC corridor may be a far dream. The third problem is this sea route between Haifa and Piraeus. It passes through disputed waters. The Greek and Turkish armies frequently clash in these waters due to unresolved economic zones and maritime boundaries. This adds an additional layer of uncertainty to the project. Now, let's look at how the IMEC compares to the BRI and whether it is a threat to China. In terms of objectives, both projects share similarities, but China's Belt and Road Initiative surpasses the IMEC in terms of scale. Announced in 2013, the BRI is now a decade old. The project has expanded to over 150 countries, with China having invested $1 trillion in over 3,000 projects. Notably, the BRI is entirely financed by China. On the contrary, the IMEC is still in the planning phase and is yet to be implemented. In terms of geographical coverage, the corridor is projected to span 20 countries, primarily in the Middle East and Europe. Moreover, the project is said to require a significantly smaller investment, possibly a few $1 billion. And unlike the BRI, the IMEC involves the interest of all member countries and will be financed by all. This clearly shows that the IMEC might not be a threat to the BRI. China also stands to gain from the corridor. The Haifa port, although owned by the Adani Group, has its operations controlled by China. In 2021, the port's operations were handed over to China's state-run Shanghai International Port Group for 25 years. Similarly, the Chinese shipping giant COSCO owns a 51% stake in the Piraeus Port Authority in Greece. Even Chinese companies have had a substantial presence in Saudi Arabia's railway sector for nearly 2 decades. So, even if China isn't a part of the project, it stands to gain from it. Now, with all the geopolitical tensions brewing in the Middle East and the economic crisis in Europe, it has to be seen whether the IMEC will become a reality. And if it does, how long will it take?